When my son Jake walked across the stage to give his valedictorian speech, I sat in the front row where his father Tom should have been sitting beside me. But Tom was 3 rows back, next to Amanda, his new wife, her hand possessively on his arm. They'd made sure everyone knew they were attending together, playing Happy Blended Family for the cameras. Jake had written his speech weeks ago, practiced it with me every night. But that morning, he'd asked for my phone, said he needed to add something. I handed it to him without question, because what I didn't tell Tom was that Jake had known the truth for months. And as my son stepped up to the microphone, adjusted his cap, and smiled at the crowd of 500 parents and students, I realized he hadn't added to his speech. He'd replaced it entirely. "Before I begin," Jake said, his voice steady and clear, "I want to thank someone who couldn't be here today." Tom sat up straighter, probably thinking Jake meant his late grandfather. Amanda smiled, that practiced smile she'd perfected. "My father," Jake continued, and the room went silent, "chose to attend Amanda's daughter's dance recital instead of my graduation, so I'd like to dedicate this speech to him and to everyone in the audience who thinks they can rewrite history without consequences." Tom and I met in college, one of those whirlwind romances that feels inevitable when you're 22 and believe love conquers everything. We married at 25, bought a house at 27, had Jake at 29. From the outside, we looked like the blueprint for suburban success. But marriage, I learned, is less about the moments everyone sees and more about the thousands of small choices no one witnesses. And Tom, for all his charm and ambition, had a talent for making choices that served him first. He was a corporate attorney, the kind who worked late hours and weekend golf outings that were essential for clients. I was a high school English teacher, which meant I had summers off, and, according to Tom's mother, plenty of time to handle things at home. I handled things: Jake's doctor appointments, parent-teacher conferences, birthday parties, soccer practices. I handled the groceries, the bills, the repairs Tom promised to get to, but never did. I handled the loneliness of eating dinner alone while my husband worked late 3, 4, 5 nights a week. Jake was 7 when I started noticing the real discrepancies. Not just the late nights, but the credit card charges at restaurants Tom swore were business dinners, even though they were on weekends. The new cologne. The way he'd shower immediately after coming home. Even on cold winter nights when he supposedly came straight from the office. I didn't confront him. Not then. Because I had Jake to think about, and a mortgage, and a life I'd built that felt too complicated to dismantle over suspicions. But I started documenting. Quietly, methodically, the way I graded papers, with attention to detail and evidence. I kept a calendar noting his absences. I photographed credit card statements. I created a folder on my laptop labeled Garden Planning that had nothing to do with plants. By the time Jake was 10, I had 3 years of evidence showing a pattern I could no longer ignore. That's when I hired the investigator. Her name was Patricia, a former police detective who'd specialized in fraud cases. "Most people wait too long," she said during our first meeting. "They convince themselves they're wrong, that they're paranoid. But patterns don't lie." It took her 6 weeks to compile everything. Tom had been seeing a woman named Amanda for 4 years. She was a paralegal at a competing firm, divorced with a daughter named Sophie who was 2 years younger than Jake. They'd been careful. No hotels in our city, no restaurants where they might be recognized, but not careful enough. Patricia handed me a folder thick with evidence, photos of them at restaurants 2 towns over, parking garage footage showing them arriving and leaving together, Credit card receipts that matched dates Tom had claimed he was working late or out with clients. Phone records showing thousands of texts and calls. "What do you want to do?" Patricia asked. "I want a divorce," I said, "on my terms." I waited. Not because I was weak, but because I was strategic. I needed Jake to be old enough to understand, needed my finances in order, needed my documentation airtight. Tom thought he was getting away with something. I was letting him think that while I prepared. I got promoted to department head at school, which came with a significant raise. I opened my own bank account. I consulted with the best divorce attorney in the county, learned exactly what I was entitled to. I documented every penny Tom spent on Amanda. Dinners, gifts, a weekend trip to Napa he'd claimed was a business conference. By the time Jake was 13, I was ready. I served Tom papers on a Tuesday afternoon. He came home from work to find me sitting at the kitchen table. Jake at soccer practice, divorce documents laid out neatly beside a printout of Patricia's entire investigation. He'd gone pale. "Megan, what is this?" "What it looks like." "I'm divorcing you." "We can work through this." "No," I said calmly. "We can't. Because you've been having an affair with Amanda Pierce for 5 years. And I have proof of everything." I slid the folder across the table, watched him open it, watched his face cycle through shock, denial, anger, and finally, calculation. "Jake doesn't need to know," he said quietly. "Jake already knows you're never home. Now he'll know why." The divorce took 8 months. Tom tried to negotiate, to keep things amicable, which was code for keeping me quiet about Amanda. But I wasn't interested in protecting his image. I wanted what was fair. I got the house, primary custody of Jake, with Tom getting every other weekend and rotating holidays. Tom got to keep his precious career, but it cost him alimony, child support, and half of everything we'd built. He moved in with Amanda 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, played happy blended family immediately, posting photos of the 4 of them at dinner, at amusement parks, living the life he'd been secretly building while still married to me. Jake saw through it. Even at 13, he understood who'd been there and who hadn't, who made his lunches and who forgot his birthday, who showed up to games and who always had an excuse. "I don't want to go there," Jake said before his first weekend at Tom's new place. "You have to," I said gently. "Court order." "He doesn't even want me there. He wants to play dad to Sophie." I hugged him. "I know, but you still have to go." And he did. Every other weekend, holidays, summer weeks. He went, and he endured, and he watched Tom try to rewrite their history into something palatable for Amanda's benefit. High school changed Jake. He threw himself into academics, into robotics club, into debate team. Things Tom showed zero interest in. I went to every competition, every meeting, every late-night pickup. Tom sent checks and showed up to mandatory events where other parents would see him, where he could perform being a father. Jake stopped calling him Dad around sophomore year, started calling him Tom instead. It drove Tom crazy, but he couldn't force Jake to respect him. By senior year, Jake had transformed into something remarkable. Straight A's, captain of the debate team, accepted to MIT with a full scholarship. He'd earned valedictorian through sheer determination, and I'd never been more proud. The graduation ceremony was scheduled for June 15th, a Saturday afternoon. Jake had been working on his valedictorian speech for weeks, writing and rewriting, practicing delivery in our living room while I listened and offered notes. Then, 3 weeks before graduation, Tom called. "Sophie has a dance recital that Saturday," he said. "Big competition. She's been working toward it all year." I felt the bottom drop out. That's Jake's graduation. I know, but this competition only happens once. Graduation happens every year. Not valedictorian speeches, I said, my voice tight. Not our son's once-in-a-lifetime moment. He'll understand. Sophie needs support, too. Then Amanda can take her. You come to your son's graduation. I'm going to the recital, Tom said. Jake's a mature kid. He'll get it. He hung up. I sat in the kitchen for a long time after that call, anger and disgust warring in my chest. Then I told Jake. He took it better than I expected. Too well. He just nodded, said, "Okay," and went back to his room. That should have been my first clue. The morning of graduation, Jake came downstairs in his cap and gown, looking sharp and older than his 18 years. He ate breakfast, made small talk, seemed completely calm. Then he asked, "Mom, can I use your phone? Need to add something to my speech. Mine's dead, and I don't have time to charge it." I handed it to him without question. He'd been practicing that speech for weeks. Adding a thank you or an extra acknowledgement seemed reasonable. He spent an hour in his room. When he came out, he handed my phone back. All set. "What did you add?" "Just wanted to thank some people properly," he said with a smile that should have warned me. We drove to the school together. I helped him with his honor cords, straightened his cap, took a dozen photos. He seemed excited, energized, ready. The auditorium was packed, 500 people. Students, families, faculty. I sat in the front row, the seat I'd reserved weeks ago. The seat where Tom's name was still on the placeholder card, like maybe he'd change his mind at the last minute. He didn't. But 3 rows back, I saw him, with Amanda. And Sophie, in her dance competition outfit, like they'd come straight from the recital to make an appearance. Tom saw me looking, gave a little wave like this was all perfectly normal. I turned back around, jaw tight. The ceremony proceeded as scheduled. Principal Harris gave opening remarks. The choir sang. Awards were distributed. And then it was time for the valedictorian speech. "Please welcome our class valedictorian, Jacob Chen." The auditorium erupted in applause. Jake crossed the stage, shook hands with Principal Harris, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at the crowd. His eyes found mine first. He smiled. Then he looked at Tom. The smile changed into something else entirely. "Before I begin," Jake said, his voice carrying perfectly through the sound system, "I want to thank someone who couldn't be here today." My stomach dropped. Because that wasn't what we'd practiced. That wasn't in the speech I'd heard 20 times. Tom sat up straighter. Amanda touched his arm. Around them, parents leaned in, expecting a touching tribute. "My father," Jake continued, and the room went absolutely silent, "chose to attend Amanda's daughter's dance recital instead of my graduation. So I'd like to dedicate this speech to him and to everyone in the audience who thinks they can rewrite history without consequences." I stopped breathing. Behind me, I heard someone gasp. Jake pulled out note cards. Not the ones I'd seen him practice with. New ones. "See, I've spent the last 5 years watching my father build a new family while pretending the old one never mattered. He moved out when I was 13, moved in with Amanda 2 weeks after the divorce was final, and has spent every moment since trying to convince everyone, including himself, that he's a devoted family man." Tom's face had gone completely white. People were turning in their seats, looking back at him. "But devoted fathers show up," Jake said. "They show up to science fairs, debate tournaments, robotics competitions. They show up when their kid makes honor roll, gets into MIT, earns valedictorian. They show up even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's Inconvenient. Principal Harris moved toward the side of the stage, looking uncertain whether to intervene. My father sends checks, though, Jake continued, his voice steady and strong. He sends checks and shows up to mandatory events where other people can see him. And he posts photos on social media of his new blended family like we're all one big happy household. But here's what those posts don't show. He pulled out my phone, and held it up. This is a calendar of every event my father has attended in the last 5 years versus every event he missed. The red marks are misses. There are 187 of them. The green marks are appearances. There are 23. Oh my God. Jake had been documenting, just like I had. This is a collection of text messages, Jake continued, swiping through screens, where my father canceled plans last minute, forgot important dates, or sent money instead of showing up. Would you like to hear some? Jake, Principal Harris called from the side of the stage, but her voice was quiet, uncertain, because every parent in that room was either horrified or riveted. Maybe both. Jake ignored her. December 15th, my robotics tournament finals. Can't make it, sport. Work thing came up. Proud of you, though. With a thumbs up emoji. A few people in the audience laughed, sharp and uncomfortable. March 3rd, my debate championship. Sophie has a thing that day. You understand. May 20th, my MIT acceptance celebration dinner that my mom planned. Going to pass. Amanda's not feeling great. He lowered the phone, looked directly at Tom. But yesterday, when Sophie's dance recital conflicted with my graduation, my father said, "Jake's a mature kid. He'll understand." The silence in the auditorium was suffocating. "And he's right," Jake said quietly. "I do understand. I understand that some parents choose presence and some choose performance. I understand that real family isn't about blood or legal obligation. It's about showing up consistently, even when no one's watching. It's about the small moments, the boring Tuesday afternoons, the unglamorous work of actually being there." His eyes found mine again. I understand, because I had a parent who chose presence, who came to every single event, who helped with every project, who stayed up late listening to me practice this exact speech. And I want to thank her properly. "Mom, can you stand up?" I couldn't move, couldn't process what was happening. "Mom," Jake repeated gently, "please." I stood shakily. Every eye in the auditorium turned to me. "This is my real family," Jake said. "Everything I've accomplished, every opportunity I've earned, every moment that mattered." She was there. Not just physically, but fully present, fully committed, fully showing up. Tears were streaming down my face now. "So this speech isn't about academic achievement or future goals," Jake said, turning back to the crowd. "It's about accountability. It's about the fact that you don't get to rewrite history just because the truth is uncomfortable. You don't get to show up for the big public moments after missing all the private ones and expect gratitude." He looked at Tom one more time. "You chose Sophie's recital over my graduation. That's your choice. But don't expect me to call you when I move to MIT next month. Don't expect me to come home for holidays where you can parade me around for Amanda's family. And don't ever expect me to pretend that checks and social media posts equal actual parenting." Jake folded his note cards carefully. "To my classmates, choose people who choose you. Don't accept half-hearted commitment. And call it love. Don't shrink your expectations to accommodate people who can't be bothered to show up. You deserve better. We all deserve better." He stepped back from the microphone. "Thank you." For 3 long seconds, nobody moved. The silence was absolute, crushing. Then someone started clapping. Slowly at first, then building. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was on their feet, applause thundering through the space. Everyone except Tom, who sat frozen in his seat, face pale, Amanda's hand no longer on his arm but covering her mouth. Jake walked off the stage, diploma in hand, and came straight to me. I wrapped my arms around him and held on while he whispered, "I'm sorry if that was too much." It wasn't, I managed. It was perfect. The aftermath was immediate and brutal. Tom left before the ceremony ended, Amanda and Sophie trailing behind him. By the time Jake and I got home, my phone had 17 missed calls and twice as many texts from Tom, ranging from furious to apologetic to threatening. I blocked his number. Jake had already blocked him months ago. Tom's family called, split between horrified and supportive. His mother, surprisingly, said quietly, "He needed to hear that." We all did. The speech went viral by Sunday morning. Someone had recorded it, posted it to TikTok, and within hours, it had millions of views. "Valedictorian destroys absent father in graduation speech" became the headline. Jake's words resonated with thousands of people who'd experienced similar parental disappointment. Tom hired a lawyer, threatened defamation. My lawyer, the same one who'd handled the divorce, sent back a simple response. Truth is an absolute defense. Also, your client is trying to sue his own son for telling the truth at his own graduation. Reconsider. Tom dropped it. Jake moved to MIT in August, started his freshman year with a clean slate, 3,000 miles from his father's disappointment and attempts at reconciliation. Tom tried calling, emailing, showing up at my house demanding I fix this. "I didn't break it," I told him the last time he showed up. "You did. Every time you chose not to show up. Every time you sent money instead of presents. Every time you prioritized your new family over the son you already had." "He humiliated me," Tom said. "No," I replied. "He held you accountable. There's a difference." Tom hasn't contacted Jake since. Sophie's mother reached out to me, surprisingly, 6 months later. "I didn't know," Amanda said over coffee, looking older and tireder than I remembered. "I didn't know he'd been that absent. He told me you poisoned Jake against him." "I didn't need to," I said. "His own choices did that." She nodded slowly. "We're separated now. Turns out, a man who abandons one family will eventually abandon another." I wasn't surprised. Jake comes home for holidays. He calls weekly. He sends photos of his dorm, his projects, his friends. He's building a life that's entirely his own, one choice at a time. And every single one of those choices reflects the lessons he learned, not from the parent who left, but from the one who stayed. Last week, he called to tell me he'd made Dean's List. "I wish you could have been there to see me get the certificate," he said. "I'm there every day," I told him. "I don't need to see a certificate to know you're brilliant." "Mom," he said quietly, "thank you for showing up. For all of it. Always," I said. Because that's what real family does. Not the performance of it, but the practice of it. The unglamorous, exhausting, beautiful work of showing up over and over, especially when nobody's watching. Tom built a new family and thought he could rewrite the old story to make himself the hero. But Jake wrote the ending himself. And in his version, the hero wasn't the parent who showed up for photo opportunities. It was the parent who showed up for everything else. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment about where you're watching from. And if you've ever had a parent who chose performance over presence, you're not alone. Subscribe for more stories. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth, even when everyone's watching.